Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 5 of Land of the Lustrous, and things don't look great. Things look actually kind of scary because PHOS, surprising no one, has gotten into trouble. They foolishly trusted the slugberry that is, as we've come to find out, is a representative of part of humanity that has become the flesh of the bottom of the ocean. The bones of humanity have become the gemstones, and the spirit, seemingly, is the Lunarians who are trying to get a hold of said gemstones and flesh to combine them all together and revamp humanity, because that seems like something that's totally feasible. And, yeah, PHOS is seemingly about to be captured by the Lunarians, who have struck a deal with Veri to give back her brother so that she'll trade PHOS out for the brother who's been imprisoned by them and has showed up in this giant conch shell. So why not? I'm really excited, and so far, the first episode has come out on YouTube, and the second episode is out on Patreon. I haven't been able to look at the second episode on Patreon's comments yet because my moderator hasn't been able to go through them, but I wanted to go ahead and watch this episode, so I do have some comments from episode 1, though, that I want to share with you all. So, Pancake from Patreon says, I just realized that this show and Doro, which I'm watching on the same day on the channel, so it's a fun time, both have heavy Buddhist influence. Just a fun observation since you react to them on the same day. Doro is easy to see since they mention and worship Buddha as part of the big religious figure in episode 1. This show has the master wearing a Buddhist monk outfit, like Geto from Jujutsu Kaisen. The Lunarians look a lot like the iconography of significant entities in the Buddhist canon, and their heads, when cut open, look like a lotus root, and lotus is a symbol of enlightenment in Buddhism. So that's interesting to me because we talked last episode about how Adamant keeps having the visions and the dreams of the Lunarians coming for him and trying to get a hold of him. And if they're all connected together, it's like, okay, why is he wearing the Buddhist monk robe? What does he know that we don't know about the Lunarians? Has he been on the moon before and escaped? Like, how does that all work? So it feels like there's something else there and we just don't know exactly about it yet. So the mystery of the show is intriguing, and I'm very curious to see what all we're going to find out about it later. But yeah. And then Mumin Comet said that inclusions, that are like the little things in the minerals that are making them alive, are just like materials that are trapped inside the gem. And so they sent me this link to the inclusions as we see on the good old wikis. And it says, in mineralogy, inclusion is any material trapped inside a mineral during its formation. In gemology, it's an object enclosed within a gemstone or reaching its surface from the interior. According to James Hutton's law of inclusions, fragments included in a host rock are older than the rock itself. So yeah, so basically, if we talked about last episode that humanity, when it finally faced its apocalypse, devolved into 3 different categories, or evolved if you consider spiritual enlightenment. But basically the matter of humanity, the DNA of humanity, is trapped in the gemstones. Now, is there some other force creating, allowing them to be as they are? Who knows? But the human-like qualities of the gemstones seem to come from those inclusions that are included in themselves. So I always think of inside the amber in Jurassic Park, there's the mosquito. So that's kind of like one of those situations. But yeah, that's so cool. I really am fascinated by the lore getting combined. Like, fantasy combining with science is such a cool venture for a series to do, and this series does it very well. So I'm super excited about that. But yeah, I'm not super excited about where this is going. So before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out over to our Patreon to thank our philanthropy tier for helping to support. Also, many thanks to Liam Poles, who helped, which I'm going to mention you here in a second again, who helped get the episodes downloaded for all of this. So special thanks to our philanthropy tier, including Alex Cornejo, Anime Annie, Be Happy, Bryant Reed, Damage 3245, Dana, Danger Zone, Danny Donmai, Devorin, Destiny Marie. I'm going to mention Damage again. Ichu, Eric, Fisho, Ghostly Turnip, El Freya, Liam Poles for the episodes, as well as Lyndon, Matthew Palfinier, Murphy, Nancy, Mass Art, Nicholas, Sunspots, Shimoyama, Trails, Translucent Men, Alexandra Q, Moroni W, and I alone am the bitchless one. Thank you all so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. Yeah. So let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? I have no clue where this battle, it's right now, it's just Very and Foss is not a fighter. So somebody's either gonna have to come in and help or not. So we're gonna get started and find out with episode 5 of Land of the Lustrous here in 3, 2, 1, and I'll see you all on the other side. Well, that did not go at all like I thought it was. Oh my gosh. So, well, I feel better slightly about that episode, although I have there's a lot of wheel flags going off in the distance, but we'll cross those bridges when we get to it, right? Right? We need to talk about this episode, but I was really happy that Foss was not taken by the Lunarians. This episode is called The Return, which is interesting because I think you can come at that from a lot of different angles. So we're going to kind of talk our way through them this episode. Can we just say that the CGI and everything is so beautiful in this? I really took, I think, Trigun Stampede for granted because that series is animated very well and it's very beautiful and the movement is really, really good. If you've not watched it, go to my channel, watch Trigun Stampede. You don't have to watch the 98 anime to get it, so don't feel like you have to watch that original anime to get Stampede. You'll find out. But I do really appreciate Studio Orange's animation in that series, and here, seeing it like predating that, I feel like I enjoy it even more. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And like even the Blades of Grass where we start out with, like it looks very good. It doesn't look like, you know, A Bug's Life from 2001, like that kind of CGI. It feels almost like a storybook. It feels like a children's book that you would see illustrated in 2D and they've made it 3D, but the models with the gemstones, everything, even the Lunarians kind of look a little different. They don't look as kind of like see-through and metallic or opaque or whatever. They look more like airy. So even the textures between the characters and what type of species they are kind of varies a little bit. And I really like that. So yeah. So Morta and Hage are the ones I always forget. And they're the pink and silver haired ones. But yeah, so we have our hook-shaped set of land. Not a very large set of land, mind you, that is left from the remnants of the apocalypse that's left there. And my dogs are probably going to bark outside, but I don't know if y'all can hear them. There's like deer outside, so I went ahead and put them out so they could bark out there and not make too much noise in here, but here we are. What's interesting is Foss says it was her birthday today, y'all. It was Foss's birthday. She was 300 years old today. That raises lots of questions because I'm like, Foss has been here for 300 years and you're just now getting her to write an encyclopedia. Okay. But also the idea of this kind of stagnant culture that's been the same for 300 years and they just kind of humdrum go about their day the same way all the time and just fighting the Lunarians. That's kind of insane to me. I want to know, I have many questions like, have they been fighting the Lunarians for 300 years? Or is this something relatively recent? Why does Adamant dress so differently than the others? And it seems like his outfit is connected more to Buddhism, which is connected to the Lunarians. Was he kidnapped by the Lunarians and did he escape? I want to know his backstory. How long did it take to develop all this? Are they living in the remnants of a culture before them that was wiped out by the Lunarians? How does that work? There's lots of questions that come with this, and I'm hoping that the series answers them, or maybe the manga afterwards answers them. I don't want to know anything about the manga. Please don't tell me. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it at the end of this series. But I'm very curious because it's so interesting to me. I'm like, I want to know more with these characters. But I was really worried about this. Like they say Morganite and Goshenite are surveying the Cord Shore area, which is Morga and Gosha, right? And then Neptunite and Benito-nite, which is Neptune and Benito, which we met them both previously. The purple-haired one is Neptunite and the dark blue-haired one is Bentonite. They're on the Western Plateau. All right, which is them. And then we have Yellow Diamond and Zircon. Now, Yellow Diamond is the one that has the golden hair, which Yellow Diamond, that'll make sense now. And Zircon, like Zirconia, is the one that looks amber-ish. That all makes sense too. I can see that. We're meeting more of there on White Hill. And then they said, what did they say there after that? What did they say? They said, also, and they're like, what are they? There was one was named Watermelon. We have Yellow Diamond and Zircon on White Hill. And then they said that they haven't seen anything. And then, yeah, Hemimorphite and Watermelon are surveying the Eastern Plains. So I want to look up real quick Hemimorphite, because I'm like, who is Hemimorphite? I'm like, give me answers. Okay, Hemimorphite. Oh, Hemimorphite has like a bluish turquoise hue. I wonder if, well, no, that one's white, but then it says it also could be blue too. Interesting. There was one, but they called her Alex. So I'm like, where Alex? I'm going to look up, is it Alexandrite? Yeah, oh, it is Alexandrite. Yay! I was like, I've heard of that before. Yeah, and Alexandrite has different colors to it, because I remember being kind of into gemstones, like when we were picking out our senior rings. Oh, Alexandrite has like a sort of like turquoise but purple quality to it. But then if you mix it together, it kind of looks a little bit blue. So maybe that's why her hair's like that. Interesting. I say her, I mean them. Y'all know what I mean. And then, of course, Watermelon gem. Oh, Tourmaline. Oh, yeah. Watermelon Tourmaline. That's the one that had the green hair with the pink on top. That's like in the center. Yes. Okay. There we go. So Tourmaline. Oh, nice. That actually is beautiful. I love those colors. That's really cool. I'm going to learn about all these gemstones by the time we're done. It's going to be great. So, okay. That makes sense. So they're all looking for PHOS, right? All trying to find PHOS. And of course, Red Barrel's mad because they took off with their outfit, and they're like, do they think that PHOS really went out to sea? And they're like, oh, would they actually, absolutely, would they disobey Adamant's orders? Surely not. And then I like that Jade actually sticks up for PHOS, and they're like, oh, they instantly shut Jade down. And I feel that Jade, Jade is an interesting character, because they get in fights with Rutile all the time. But they also seem to they come across a little Cinderay at first, but they really are like the one that's like, oh, PHOS will be fine. They're like, no, that's not the case. So interesting. Meanwhile, when you talk about dynamics, Diamond is like the one who is able to go talk to Cinnabar. Diamond's like the only one other than PHOS that talks to Cinnabar and is successful. I also love the animation of when Cinnabar turns around, the little spikes of mercury, like spikes showing that they're not happy Diamond's there. Cinnabar is the most angsty, where they're like, just go away, leave me alone. And Diamond's like, well, but, shouldn't we be looking for PHOS? Why would PHOS go into the sea? Like, maybe PHOS is looking for something we don't have around here. And of course, Cinnabar understands what that means. Cinnabar is very smart and connects the dots from their conversation with PHOS and is like, oh, yeah, PHOS did talk about looking for something for me to do, and they would go into the sea to see if that was possible. No, that all shakes out, actually. And you could just see, that PHOS is like, or that Cinnabar's like, that could actually happen. And so then when Diamond said this, when Diamond was like, oh, maybe like your heart or something. And then Cinnabar has the little mercury globules go around them. And they're like, I've had about enough of you. Yeah. So Diamond knows. Diamond is knows that PHOS likes Cinnabar, that PHOS is trying to help Cinnabar. I was really worried for a hot second that PHOS lost their memories of Cinnabar, but that does not seem to be the case, which is good. I am a little bit worried because this series seems like it's trying to be a little angsty and maybe have a bittersweet ending. And I wonder, as who Foss starts out as this very caring, very compassionate, very weak, physically stone, as they get newer parts to their body that make them stronger, is the sacrifice they're going to have to make that they're going to forget parts of themselves to become stronger. And what I don't want to happen is for Foss to get to the point where they forget about Cinnabar and forget their love for them at the cost of becoming stronger. That's what I don't want to happen. Do I think this series might do it? Yeah, I think it might. And I'm really not wanting them to do that. I hope I'm wrong, because I'm like, no, don't. Like, the angstiest thing you could do would be to make it to where these characters can't be together. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. But yeah, poor Cinnabar. Cinnabar is so angsty. They are angst central. And they're like, I want to find something that only you can do. And Cinnabar was like, meh. I was actually surprised that the Lunarians didn't smash Foss up, but Foss didn't put up much of a fight, so figures. They could go to the bottom of the ocean and find Foss's legs, but I guess at this point they're like, they don't want to risk it. They don't want to go down there if they found a way to replace the legs. Sure thing. Maybe the Lunarians took the legs with them. Maybe they gathered them up and took them out, but I was so worried. And oh my God, like, the Lunarians look so excited to see Foss getting lifted up there. Also, the Lunarian designs, like all the minions, they are kind of like the gemstones. They have kind of features of both traditional feminine and masculine on them as well, just like the gemstones. So that part is very interesting to me. But yeah, poor Foss is getting lifted up there to this giant shell and everything to get fished away. Anyway, so they find the footprints, and I want to talk about the rainbow zebra stripe gum, like, bounding that is happening around, like, the ropes that the Lunarians use to bind the gemstones and the brother are like rainbow zebra stripe gum. Very cool. I love the colors. It's awesome, but just such an interesting choice. But yeah, so there is the one. Honestly, the giant Lunarian that's at the head looks like something I would see in a Donghua, honestly. But they have all these fires. I don't know if the fire is just to keep the others at bay or to use as protection. So yeah, I also am curious how, here's my thing. Very, the RC ruler, Very was able to communicate with the Lunarians because they've been on the moon with them and know their culture and their species. Since Foss has been in the little bucket of the Lunarians, is Foss going to be able to understand the Lunarians now too? Kind of like they understood the ruler or not? Or is that something totally different? So of course, the Lunarians are greedy. We've established they're weak. They're easy to destroy, which is good. They're easy to destroy, but they're in large numbers and they're cunning and they're swift. That's their big, advantage towards the gemstones. But they also renege on their promises and go back on their word. And they're like, return my brother to his senses, and then I'll get you more. He's like, they're not fools. Also, I thought it was interesting that you see the Lunarians are attacking Very, and they actually like sear off one of their arms. And that's interesting. She's like, we could use Foss as bait to get one alone and perceptive like Cinnabar. But in that moment, Foss is like, no, and looks down at Very like, please, anybody but them. And that's when Very is like, no, Foss is the best I can do. I do appreciate Very being like, Very understands how much Foss likes Cinnabar and can kind of relate to their love of their brother. So she's like, okay, fine. I'm not going to try to get Cinnabar because Cinnabar wants that. Cinnabar wants to go to the moon. Cinnabar would be all about that. Or at least that's what Cinnabar says. So Foss is like, don't, we don't want Cinnabar to go. So I do appreciate Very being like, nope, this is the best I can do. And they sear poor Very's arm off. But in that moment, like, Foss gets the rope off their mouth and says ruler, And that's when the brother reacts to it. Can we talk about the brother? He says, I smell food. Interesting, because they're gluttonous. We established they're gluttonous and aggressive. Also, they like instantly wipe out half of the Lunarians. They're also ridiculously adorable. That little snail, or whatever it is, coming out of the giant shell is the cutest thing I've seen in a long time. It's so adorable. I'm instantly in love. I'm like, I want a plush of just that. Just that. A little thing of just that. That's my Land of the Lustrous wish list. Yeah, they are freaking adorable. But they see this. Yeah, Oculatus is the brother. And poor Various had their arm snapped off. And that's when Oculatus like fights back against the others. And like, this feels like a video game you would play where it's stamping out the Lunarians and causing like the stage to tilt that they're all on. And then it lands in the sea. And it landing in the sea seems to be like a way for it to go back to his normal state. Like it seems like the Lunarians had a hold. The Lunarians had a hold of Oculatus and had kind of like brainwashed him, or they say domesticate, which seems like they just brainwashed him to be subjugated. And so once he got back and like got a taste of home, then he like was able to go back and be in his normal self. Although the tentacles that come up and strike at the Lunarians knock off half of PHOS'S face, which I'm glad they got back. He's like, I woke up to the smell of food, which might have been PHOS. He's like, how lucky. And then of course, I love that Vary's like, oh, hey, bro. I love the design. The little curly Q tails that look like tentacles, the shoulder pads that look like tentacles on the inside, the dab booty, y'all, dab booty. I mean, spare no expense on that booty. But yeah, all these designs. Where is my, can we show this to Drag Race? Can we show the designs of Vary as well as Oculates to Drag Race and have these recreated? I feel like I need to see a drag queen dress as both of these characters. Can Sugar and Spice do this? Get on this, you two. This looks amazing. But yeah, you know of nothing but gluttony and aggression, foolish brother of mine. Like how bold you've become. But we need to leave this place at once. I love their designs. They are so good. The Lunarians are weak, but they are swift and cunning. So they'll probably, I don't know how they figure out how the moon like gets signals back and forth, but, and like, is that one of the bones? Quite the worse for wear. I like to call the gemstones the bones, which is interesting. And then what do they say there? They're beautifully colored like the shallow waters. The Lunarians would be fond of him. That to me strikes me as the Lunarians are nostalgic and they want remnants of their old world. So that's why they seek out the gemstones, which is interesting to me. We don't know a lot about the Lunarians. They're like, you used this one to rescue me, didn't you? And it's incredibly fortunate you pulled it off without handing them over to the Lunarians. But this may be their last chance. And then they say what? What else do they say? Because they mention their family members. And PHOS can hear all of this. Because PHOS is looking over. And they say that our father, our mother, and our friends, this is their last chance to be freed from a life of domestication. You were the only one on the moon with even a bit of sense. I love that contrast as Vary looks to PHOS, because Vary's like considered the only one of her people that has sense, and PHOS is considered to be the only one of her people or of their people that doesn't have sense. So it's that contrast. And I feel like while Vary understands that PHOS doesn't have sense, they also understand that how PHOS is and how they are, and doesn't want to use PHOS anymore, right? Because I feel like Vary feels that connection. So then they're like, well, you've done well. And just the way, and all on your own. Wow. And so it also kind of makes, in that moment, Vary seem a little bit like PHOS, being like, you did this all on your own, you were successful. Whereas you have PHOS who tried to do something on their own and was horribly unsuccessful. So I feel like Vary understands that contrast in this moment. And then you see, yeah, everything's starting to dissipate around them. And PHOS says, that's not fair. How can I be mad after hearing about all of this? And then Foss is like, Very was able to help her people and do it all by herself, and also was able to make it to where all of Foss's friends and family weren't taken either, and tried to do that. Like, Foss is like, what can I say to that? And then, Oculatius is like, well, do you mean you have no qualms being used for negotiations? Do you immortals fear nothing? You could never go home. And Foss is like, well, I felt really sad then, because in that moment when Foss is like, so be it, they didn't care if they went home or not. It's like, you feel bad for them because on the one hand, Foss has been telling Cinnabar to not be that way and not give up like what Foss is doing now. But then on the other hand, Foss is being this martyr and saying, well, if I have to go to help your family and friends, I'll do it. And I'm like, Foss, quit, stop it. You just told Cinnabar not to do the same thing. But then you think back to all the times in previous episodes so far where the other gemstones have been like, oh, Foss, Foss is good for nothing. And now you're like, you see the impact of their words, and Foss is just like, maybe I am good for nothing. And I'm like, no, don't give up, Foss. So then they're like, well, and then that's when Foss is like, but keep Cinnabar out of this. And that's the deal. Damn, Oculatius with them thigh-high boots and that booty. I need to see this outfit, this cosplay in real life. But then Very stops him and says, no. Very's like, you can't just give up. I love it. I love this. I love as the black is dissipating. And Very like kneels down with the one arm and says, are you certain? And Foss is like, yeah, I'm going to trade I forgive you, and I'm going to trade myself so that Cinnabar can be kept safe. But I'm like, you just saw that the Lunarians aren't going to just stop with you. And Foss is like, I don't know how to help my friends, so I might as well be useful. And if it helps you too, then that's fine. And Very is like, ugh, and they're like, what have I been doing all this time? I turned 300 today, you know. You must be so much younger, and look at what you've accomplished. Like that moment where Very was getting told by her brother everything she's been doing, and Foss is like, what have I been doing for 300 years? And you've been doing all this in your short time. It's really sad. It's really sad. And you could tell Very kind of feels for Foss. And like, if we're not willing to change either, we're no different from the Lunarians. And then let us return. So like, we're going to go back to the sea, plot out what we're going to do. And so the one, as they fall down and as the one like stage for the Lunarians dissipate, that's when the little parts of the shell that Aku came in gets torn off to be exchanged for the legs. Now, of course, the shells have collected minerals over time and deposits and used that to strengthen them. So there are minerals that would be, it's kind of like a transplant that would be useful in this case, but damn. So the thing that sucks the most, that makes me the most worried, is that they all go out into the water. They all go out into the water to look for Foss. And they're all weakened from that experience, which gives me the red flag of, oh, the Lunarians are going to come and try to attack while they're down in the next episode, which is the halfway point of the series, which is terrifying, right? That's terrifying to me. So... But then I was like, Cinnabar is watching them go into the ocean looking for Foss. And Cinnabar has Foss wash up. Why didn't Cinnabar just give them back, like go up to them and give them back Foss in the moment? Why didn't that happen? I don't know if something's left out of the manga and we just don't know it yet. But yeah, also you have Cinnabar like kind of looking down, like they're all going in pairs to go find Foss, and Cinnabar is sad because they can't go with anybody. And then says, I think we'd be better off without someone like that. So of course Cinnabar feels angsty and horrible because they called Foss a useless fool, and yet everyone here, despite Foss seeming like they're useless, everyone's sacrificing to go find Foss, and now Cinnabar feels bad about it because they're like, well, what did I do? And that's when Cinnabar's like, it's not my... And then that's when Foss says, out at sea. And they've washed up there with all the other stuff. Mm-hmm. Yep. Even out at sea, I couldn't find a new job for you. And there's the bucket with the little basket with the face. And then the little parts of the shell there. And Cinnabar is like, wanted to say it's not my fault. And then, oh my God, like Cinnabar's face when Phos says, I'm sorry, as if you couldn't make Cinnabar feel more guilty or more angsty and sad. But somehow Phos manages to do it. Like Cinnabar's face is animated so good there. So good. Like you can make that a damn screensaver. And then Phos says, tomorrow I'll try harder. Ugh. Like there's a part of you that just feels so sad because Phos still has their memories of wanting to help Cinnabar and of loving them. And it's like Cinnabar's like, no one should help me. And Phos is like, well, if you're not going to help yourself, then I'm going to do it. And it's just so, and they're like, so forgive me. And Cinnabar says, no. Cinnabar's like, I want you to just leave me alone. Oh. And Phos is like, you're a really tough one. I knew you'd say that. Oh, and just poor Cinnabar. Like, Phos is like, I know you won't forgive me, but I'm going to keep trying because I love you. And Cinnabar's just like, why does someone love me like this? Like, it's just so angsty and beautiful. And I love both of them so much. So if Euclase, we have their little silver and blue stone. They have a scale of hardness at 7.5, but apparently, Phos's legs are about to be a 7, so that's good. So I do like on the seafloor as they're looking for them, you have Bortz that is rolling around, and Bortz has all the jellyfish in their hair. That is such a cute detail, and it's so fun. But yeah, they all go back, and they're all exhausted. And they don't have enough resin to keep from going out there. My thing is, why didn't Cinnabar just bring her back or bring them back to the shore? I don't understand. But instead, they dropped them off there. And then next time, I'll be the one that saves you. So then Rutal goes back and finds them. And it's like, oh my God, there they are. Now, Adamant, who stomps their way up to the altar there. I can see now why maybe the facility has cracks in it over time because Adamant's had to like get onto them. There was some major, I know that these are non-binary gemstones, but Adamant was putting out some major dad energy or mad mom energy. Like major dad that is disgruntled dad, mad mom energy going up there being like, excuse me? We looked all over for you. You are in trouble. And everybody like backs off because they don't want to get in trouble too. And then, yeah. And then of course he yells, which crumples Phos, but then they grab Phos and all the pieces in one go. Showing that even though Adamant was mad and was like, you disobeyed my orders, you could have been. It definitely felt like in The Lion King, the moment where Simba gets in trouble and when they come back from the elephant graveyard, Mufasa like comes down and is like, I need to have a word with my son. And Adamant has a word with Phos. And it's one of those things like Adamant was worried for Phos. And that's why they're so mad, because they're like, you could have been taken by the Lunarians. You could have been killed. What are you doing? Like, do you not realize what the danger was to your siblings, your friends, me? And then Phos is like, the sea was frightening. Finally talking about how scary it was. And Adamant's like, I'll hear your report tomorrow. And then Phos is like, I'll try harder starting tomorrow. And they're like, no, you're not going to do the encyclopedia anymore. And I love Jade's like shocked Pikachu face of, oh, not the encyclopedia, the thing that Phos wasn't doing well with at all. And Adamant's like, no. I do feel for Phos because Phos wants to be useful. And I love that Jade and them are all staying up late until Phos is put back together. Except for the legs, but they do find the gems inside. So they talk about if we find, it says, when we lose a portion of our bodies, we have to replace it with a similar material, with no pre-existing microorganisms, no inclusions. But I was unable to procure enough of such material for your whole 2 legs worth. On the outside, this is even frailer than you. But the inside is made up of a type of quartz called agate. Its hardness is 7, while yours is only 3.5. And Phos just looks so done. And I think it's because Phos is like, they don't have their purpose anymore. So they feel even more like a failure than they did prior. Like, they felt like a failure first, but then they were like, well, I'll just try again. And they keep wanting to try again. Like when they fail to find a job for Cinnabar, when they fail to do the encyclopedia entry, they keep trying again. But now Animate's like, no, you don't need to do that right now. And so, of course, Phos feels like a failure. They're like, we could break it down, mix it in pieces, and it might match your level and be able to get for you. It shouldn't be too taxing. And then, of course, Phos is like, I hear you, but the whole losing my job thing makes it hard to focus. And they're like, your work has been put on a hold because Sensei is worried about you as the youngest among us. So 300 years is the youngest. Okay. Every time you go off to do something, it wears down on the others. In truth, that's probably the main reason. Probably. And so Phos like, I guess I better just break into bits again to apologize. And Rutal's like, no, think of this as your last task on the job. Tell me where these things you washed up with came from. Because I'm hesitant to try attaching them to you. Yep. But then Phos can't remember. It says Rue. They're from a russet shell. And they're like, now that you mention it, shells are known to petrify into agate. In that case. And then Phos like, are those good things going to really be good for legs? Will they move? And they're like, well, it'll depend on how the inclusions living inside of you take to their new home. Kind of like a hermit crab going into a shell, right? So it's kind of like the slug going into a shell and getting it, which I feel like, because I feel like Phos was able to take to the shell legs because they had been dissolved into the shell of Very. So there was kind of some similarity of matter there that kind of fostered that to begin with. So I think that did help with the compatibility. I like the legs. I think they're cool. It makes Phos look a little Frankenstein-y with their pinstripe legs, their candy cane legs. But I think they're kind of cool. I like them. They're neat. And so they're like, well, you'll get to worry. You'll be fine. And then Phos is like, oh, well, thank you. I want to go back and see like some of the moment there with the subtitles. They're like, well, did it not work? It'll take time to get back on your feet and they'll start moving sooner or later. Don't worry. And then Euclase and Jade are like, well, we'll help out between your shifts. And then they're like, oh, thanks for a barrel and Euclase. And they forgot Jade. Aww. Aww. They forgot who Jade was. Yeah. Losing your legs would be plenty of memories with those legs. That's a third of the body. So basically a third of Phos's memories left with the legs, which is terrifying. Again, the idea that if Phos keeps getting body parts replaced with others and they become stronger because of it, but they lose those memories, that's terrifying. So yeah. So then Alexandrite's there. And they finally, I love that it's the idea of Cinnabar being in trouble. The idea of Cinnabar being in trouble is what gets Phos to be able to move. Also, what was that bug that flies by? It like has like clouds on its wings and a butterfly, but it looks like a hodgepodge of creatures mixed together. The fudge was that. But yeah, I like that Phos thinks back to Cinnabar. He said, I was bad enough to begin with. But then they remember Cinnabar and that's their motivation. They're like, nope, I have to do something. I can't get weak-kneed. And then and so their legs make them go really, really fast, which is awesome. And so they run past Neptunite and Benedito with their new legs as the bell rings. And it's like, oh, awesome. Oh, wow. So the end card at the end of it is I'm going to take a picture of it, is PHOS washing up to shore with Cinnabar there. Oh, that's really good. That might be my new screensaver. Because that's a really good picture. I'm going to have to go back. I forgot about the end cards. I'm going to have to go back and look at those because, oh my God. So yeah, no big deal. It's fine. But there's a lot of questions still to be had with this series and this episode. Are they all going to start getting parts mixed with other things and evolve as a species of the bones? Or is it just going to be PHOS that evolves, but at what cost? What about Cinnabar? What about the Lunarians? What about Very and her brother? Where's all that going? There's so much left that I'm so curious about. So, I'm very excited to see where it goes. But I'm also very curious to see what we get next episode. So this will be very interesting. And hopefully by next episode, I'll have some more comments to look at as well. But I'm very curious to know. I may have to go back and look at the end cards and try to take snapshots of them to show them next episode as well. We'll see. But I'm super excited. I'm also very curious to know your thoughts down below. But this was a really good episode. And I'm glad that PHOS is okay. For now, they're a little bit downtrodden because they don't seemingly have a purpose, but Cinnabar is their purpose, so we're still okay. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Land of the Lustrous. Bye!